We'll intervene whenever we decide it's in our national security interest to intervene. And if you don't like it, lump it.
The problem with America is not that we go around marauding around the world imposing ourselves. The problem with America in the last 10, 15 years, since the end of the Cold War, really in the last 60 years, is that we've been too slow to get involved.
I don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed, but I can assure you that the number is the absolute minimal that it's possible in modern warfare.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make. Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
You know, that land over there is yours. You'll go back to it one day because your fight will prevail and you'll have your homes and your mosques back again because your cause is right and God is on your side.
Welcome to the Darkened Hour.
Welcome to another episode of the Darkened Hour. I'm your host, Adam Fitzgerald. With me today is a very special guest and a return guest, Mark Rossini. Mark Rossini served as an FBI representative to the CIA's Counter-terrorism Center at the CIA headquarters, and he was one of the founding executives of the National Counter-terrorism Center, where he was then situated in the 1997 New York City Joint Terrorism Task Force, where he served under the I-48 Counterterrorism Unit, which investigated Hezbollah, which was the next unit to the legendary I-49 unit, which was investigating Al Qaeda. In today's episode, Mark is here to return to discuss the FBI's investigation into the 1998 East Africa bombings of 2 U.S. embassies and the lack of a congressional inquiry in the aftermath. And we're going to be talking about the Canestraro document because it's important enough to raise again what was in it and what does this imply for the future. Mark, thank you very much for coming on again. Thank you.
My pleasure, Adam. Thank you. And thank you for your continued fight for revealing and getting to the nitty-gritty truth of the matter and what went on. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Oh, no, it's from people like you, the reason why I'm even existing at the first point. It's unfortunate because I'm a small guy, even though I'm 6'10". I'd like, I have a small channel. I wish I had a bigger channel, but I reach a lot more people. But I like to go with due diligence and just report as it is, and then try to, reach as many people as possible. And it's from people like yourself, Mark, that basically are out there, trying to blow the whistle on, malfeasance and what led to, attacks like September 11, 2001. But, thank you very much.
No, I just want someone to listen and someone to take action and correct what went on.
I wish. Yeah,
set the record straight. Yeah.
Well, let's just keep it simple for the time being.
Sure.
Let's focus on your tenure at the FBI. For those not familiar with you, Mark, when did you become an employee and how did you end up in the New York field office?
Well, I'm from New York originally, and I recruited out of the New York FBI office in 1991 is when I joined the FBI. And my first 6 years in the FBI, I worked white-collar crime, if you will. I worked public corruption, Medicaid, Medicare fraud, a little bit of organized crime work, a little bit of undercover work, really a hodgepodge of things, a homicide here and there, extortions, etc. And then in 1997, I got transferred over to the Joint Terrorism Task Force, as you said in the introduction, originally on the I-48 squad, which we had Hezbollah, the FARC, the IRA, a hodgepodge of other groups. We had Iranian foreign counterintelligence, even though we had Iranian terrorism as well. We had Hezbollah and Iranian foreign counterintelligence, whereas most foreign counterintelligence work was done by the traditional FCI side of the house, foreign counterintelligence. But we had the Iranian FCI on our squad. Well, because we know Iranian government is the main supporter and funder and backer of Hezbollah.
Right.
And then in 1998, as you know, the bombing happened, East Africa, which was committed by Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, which was in the squad next to me, I-49. And I first went to headquarters for a few weeks to be the FBI New York rep to headquarters on the 98 bombings, because immediately Washington field office declared that it was their case, because at that time they had what they called extraterritorial authority in the FBI, because Congress had given the FBI power to investigate crimes against Americans and American structures, et cetera, overseas. So Washington field officers designated by the FBI writ large to be handling Europe, Africa. Miami office, obviously Latin America, and Hawaii, anything Pacific Rim. So, but everybody in New York knew that when the 98 bombings happened, Dar es Salaam and Nairobi, Kenya, simultaneously, August 8th, a Friday, which is important. I'll get to that as to why. Washington field office immediately took the reins. And everybody knew at I-49 that it was Al Qaeda that did it, right? Now, because I-49 had a representative down at Alex Station before that happened, Dan Coleman, who I took over for, because Dan had been down at the CIA because they had a walk-in, Jamal Al-Fadl Jr., who came into the CIA to the Eritrean embassy, American embassy in Eritrea, and sought basically protection and asylum. So Junior had been being debriefed since 1996, and Dan was at Alex Station. Why is that important? So everybody knew, even at Alex Station, that it was Al Qaeda that committed the crime. Mm-hmm. So John O'Neill, God rest his soul, sent me down to be the FBI rep at headquarters to just keep abreast as to what's going on, keep New York in the loop. Boy, was I met with some hostility. I mean, it was only by the grace of God that I knew a lot of people already at headquarters. I was very good friends with a lot of them, that I didn't get like kicked out in the street, quite frankly. They didn't want to let me in the building at first on the first day. Like, what are you doing here? It was really odd. But I made friends and stayed there for a few weeks. And then the case got transferred officially over to FBI New York. And it's a very fun story. No one's around to admit it, so to speak. Well, maybe a few people around to admit it. How it became a New York case. See, a lot of people write about shit, but when you're in it, you know what happened, right? So O'Neill is a New York case, FBI New York case. Now, it's no truth of the matter that Mr. Louis Freeh, our director, great man. I have a lot of respect for Louis. There's no disrespect. Louis and John, they're not get along. It's just evident. They have different styles. They weren't the best of friends. So O'Neill had his very good hooks via some very good friends with Ms. Reno, an attorney general. And of course, Mary Jo White, then the U.S. Attorney in New York. She also obviously was a big advocate for New York FBI and the case being Al Qaeda, obviously being in New York, excuse me. So as the story goes, Ms. Reno picked up the phone after speaking to John, after speaking to Ms. White, picked up the phone and called Director Freeh and said, the East Africa bombings are now a New York case, and hung up the phone. And that was it. Just like that. It was over. Boom. So it was 265A-WF, blah, 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 blah. In 2 seconds, it became NY. And then New York took the reins. And that's when I went over to Nairobi for about 3 months to be on the ground. I came home on Thanksgiving Eve, as a matter of fact. Or 2 days before Thanksgiving. Yeah. And that was the best work I've ever done in the FBI. Now that's kind of selfish, because I was there investigating a tragedy, a murder, a homicide of 258 people. And it never left me as to why I was there.
Right.
You could not imagine. I mean, you obviously saw the wreckage of 9/11, the towers, Pentagon, et cetera, Shanksville. But when you go to that embassy in Nairobi and you look at what happened there, just the evil, the destruction of that Al Qaeda cell that had been operating apparently for 2 years beforehand. Okay, multiple wiretaps, multiple workings and interactions with the Kenyan CID, Criminal Investigative Division, their police force, which is extremely powerful police force. They can arrest on a dime. You don't need prosecutor approval to arrest somebody. You arrest them, and then they'll deal with it later. Very good investigators, extremely good investigators. We learned a lot from them. They learned a lot from us. But, Alex Station, Mr. Scheuer, who of course believes he is the end-all, do-all when it comes to counterterrorism, and only one, even in the CIA, who could solve anything or work cases properly. It was his Alex Station that had been involved in monitoring this group in Nairobi. Right. And I always wondered, when we had, all these hearings and the Grand 9/11 Commission, why didn't we ever have hearings regarding the attacks on Nairobi and Dar es Salaam? It just boggles my mind. We had hearings, we had inquiries about the USS Cole, what went on there, grand outcry, but nothing about Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. And I've always found that perplexing and just disgusting. Now, one would ask, why? Is there something to cover up? They don't want an inconvenient truth to come out. They don't want the incompetence to be known that this same counterterrorism center at the CIA, Alex Station, which had been monitoring this cell in Nairobi, allows this to happen. Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, excuse me if I leave out Dar. I'm talking about both when I just say Nairobi.
Right.
I don't know. It's mind-boggling. 258 people died. Americans died in both places, right? And not one hearing. Nothing. Why? This is what I can't figure out. And there needs to be. Maybe.
Well, I would like, to touch on that, Mark. I've always, for myself anyway, when it comes to the study of, like, say, 9/11 or Africa bombings, I liken to the work of an investigator. So in order to understand what happened in the present, you have to go back in the past.
Man.
And so let me go back a little bit of years, and it touches on a number of points that you raised just now.
Okay.
So the FBI became aware of an individual named Ali Muhammad, who was known to the CIA because he's been a CIA informant even during his days in Egypt. He's actually a radical under Osama bin Laden, known to Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri, the second in command of Al Qaeda and the emir of the Egyptian Islamic Jihad, a radical fundamentalist group in Egypt. And through this, he offered his services with the FBI, and the FBI did their due diligence. They started tracing phone calls from Muhammad's residence here in Santa Clara, California. And what they did was they also found out about a number involving another person who's an American citizen, but he's in Nairobi, named Wadi al-Hajj, who's actually bin Laden's personal secretary. Whose decision was it to get Ali Muhammad's cooperation, and did it provide useful info for the FBI initially?
I can't answer that because I don't know.
Right.
I don't know who decided that, but that would have had to have been obviously at headquarters level, New York level, SAC level. But I was not privy to that. Of course, I met Ali Muhammad after 9/11, interviewed him in jail. And he was extremely helpful.
Was he? Was he a good informant? Yeah. Was he an important informant?
Well, he was in jail in Manhattan, in the MCC at the time I interviewed him. But that was, that was post 9/11. That wasn't just the buildings actually were still smoking when we came up to interview him. Very interesting guy, cold, but could be quite charming. And but he's an enigma. He really is. But he wrote the Al Qaeda manual, right? I mean, he taught Al Qaeda how to blend in. The training manual. He taught them how to assimilate. He's warriors. He was a member of the Egyptian army, and he was a source for the CIA. Now, officially, I don't know how much officially of a source he was for the FBI beforehand, but clearly became a cooperator with the FBI, obviously 9/11, because that's why I was able to interview him, and he, obviously cooperated. Where he is now, what he's doing, I don't know. That's a mystery. He could be still in a jail someplace, or he could be free, or in a camp, or who knows where he is. But I know a determination was made never to let him free, because he could just immediately, in the assessment back then, go right back to being evil. Whereas he was extremely helpful in us understanding Al Qaeda after 9/11 and the whereabouts in Afghanistan, and let's say how would they defend themselves in a firefight and all that kind of stuff. He could just as easily, the assessment back then was if he was let go, he would come back and he would kill us all in the room if he had to, if he could. So that's what you were dealing with.
One thing I noticed, Mark, regarding preparation for this interview was just like with 9/11. You've had this influx of radical fundamentalists coming into the United States during the mid-periods of the 1990s. And for example, the Boston Globe actually published an article, and I saw this article, and stated the quote, senior officials say that Ali Mohammed, who's of Egyptian origin, benefited from a visa waiver program that allows the CIA to bring valuable agents into the country, bypassing the usual immigration formalities. And intelligence sources actually said that the waivers are controlled by the CIA's Department of Operations. And we actually saw this program headed by the CIA, where they allowed, fundamentalists on the terrorist watch list named Omar Abdel Rahman in 1990. And then in the Visa Express program between 1999 and 2001, where most of the 9/11 hijackers got their applications approved. Now, my question to you is, were the FBI made aware of these programs? And if so, how did this affect the FBI's investigation into bin Laden and Al Qaeda at this point?
No, to my recollection and knowledge, no, the FBI was not aware of that. Clearly not in the FBI New York office. Clearly not to the friends of mine that I know that worked the first World Trade Center bombing. No. If anybody didn't know in the Bureau, it would have had to have been at a headquarters level, at the senior executive level. That would have been some sort of agreement between the two directors at the time. But on the street level, if you will, the working level, no.
I mean, for guys like you would have caught a heart attack. All these guys coming in here.
It goes back to the, let's say take the DEA, for example, using this as a scenario, where they know they're working a drug dealer who's a low-level drug dealer, but they allow that drug dealer to operate until the local sheriff, police department stand down, he's our guy. Let him, because we want to see, who his supply is, right? We're working the source and finding out who he's selling to, and so you let that, but you strictly monitor that, okay? You don't let it fail or fall, and it's a pure 100% law enforcement activity that's monitored day and night. Strict rules and protocols the FBI and the DEA and any other police agency has. But here you possibly have a case, okay, where the CIA, have this, I'm sorry, I'm going to say delusional belief that you're going to run some operation in America, or you're going to allow these people in and use your own personnel to monitor them and see what's going on.
Right.
You know, let me just clarify one thing. I really admire the CIA. Okay, when I was there, I saw what they did. It would blow your mind. The movies can't even make up what they did on a daily basis. Okay, what they got right. Okay, how they're able to get things done instantaneously, how they respond, the dedication of the men and women that I met there. Okay, but I'm talking about a few that, of course, their actions ended in tragedy. This notion that they could somehow control this group. Again, we in the FBI are the people that I know that worked on the first bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. They had no idea this was going on, or not a clue. And if they did, they would have been apoplectic, or moreover, they would have said, no, we're involved. We're involved with it. We're taking over. We're going to meet with the sources. Okay. Same thing, like I've always postulated, why the CIA did not release Doug Miller's memo regarding the hijackers coming to America. The same answer you got from Mike Shorey when you interviewed him, that if he had been in charge of Alex Station, he would not have allowed Doug Miller's memo to go either. I rest my case. Same thing. Don't let the FBI know, because the FBI is going to come with their damn rule book and their freaking constitution and their rules and going to do it the right way, rather than a delusional fantasy way that we're going to recruit somebody. We're going to play a fucking spy game. We're playing a spy game with people's lives. And then the tragedy happens, and we made a mistake, but don't admit anything. Don't tell Congress anything. Crazy. How do you live? How do you go to bed at night knowing these things? How do you sleep? How do you not have a conscience? I mean, it boggles the imagination. And it, basically it drove me nuts. I mean, really, I almost had a nervous breakdown over it in the aftermath years, because I couldn't live with it anymore, and I still can't live with it. What went on? I think about it. Adam, this is going to sound pathetic, and the people watching this are going to say this guy's an asshole. I think about it every day. I think about 9/11 tragedy every day of my life. Not a day goes by. Well, I don't think about John O'Neill. I don't think about the people who died. I don't think about how it's changed the world, how it's made us so much insecure as a society. All the shit that it opened up. It's awful. It's awful. Every time I travel in an airport, I'm reminded of it. I'm reminded of the absurdity of what we have to do now just to live our lives. It's crazy. It's crazy. But again,
well, I wouldn't be critical of you for that, because first of all, you're intimately involved. Whereas I myself, I'm also the same way, but I do it for a different reason, because of studies issues. But you shouldn't be too critical about yourself regarding that. So
it's interesting. It's people like you that give people like me hope and a platform to talk about it. And you look at it from a different perspective. I look at it, emotionally and rawly, because I was there and involved in it. And you look at it, critically from a study point of view, as you said. Not, of course, there's emotion involved, but you are just taking the facts. I'm taking facts with a lot of emotion. What always assaulted my intelligence was, again, the lack of accountability, or pinpointing, coming out and saying it happened because Doug memo did not go, and getting to the bottom of as to why it didn't go. That's the lack of accountability, which then prompted me, in talking with you and looking at your other videos and talking about Nairobi, saying, why were there never hearings? Why not bring Scheuer or people at Alex Station or CTC for congressional hearings? Say, why does this happen? Because we know, okay, I'm not saying anything that I learned at the CIA, but unfortunately, I thank God it's public knowledge, because yes, I would be in trouble if I talked about the investigation started in 1996, right? Monitoring that cell. So you tell me you're monitoring a cell for 2 years. You've got wiretaps out the wazoo, okay, of that cell. Surveillance going on, tasking the Kenyan police, blah, blah, blah. This is all known. I'm not saying anything private or secret. And yet, not one hearing. And now when we take the 30,000-foot view, we all know now that the East Africa bombings were just a precursor to 9/11. That was the warm-up act. And, Al Qaeda, Osama bin Laden, being very, very crafty. Now we know in perspective, inviting John Miller, ABC News reporter John Miller. I mean, he had spoken to obviously other reporters before Miller, but Miller's was the first really public one that flashed on American screens, right? And if you go back to that footage of Miller interviewing bin Laden in this unknown place in Afghanistan, because he and his producer were brought there on blindfolds, etc. In the interview, bin Laden's sitting on the floor, but behind him is a map of Africa.
Yes, that's
And
right.
Kalashnikov laying right up against it. So, in speaking to John, and John said, he goes, in hindsight, was he giving a signal? Was he projecting? Was he giving a signal to his people that operation's on, let's get this done? Or was he also trying to fuck with us a little bit, toying with me? In plain sight, I'm showing you my next target. But
Right, exactly. Right, yeah.
Right. Pretty interesting. Boy, I think,
you just ruined a question because I was going to talk about John Miller. Good premonition, but you mentioned another name, and his name, I've done a video on him before, but hardly anyone knows about him and how important he is. It's Jamal Al Qaeda. And he comes at a very critical year, Mark.
Yes.
And it's 1996.
Yes.
And so June of 96, you have the FBI and the U.S. intelligence community being aware of Jamal Al Qaeda, who had given the FBI just a gold mine of information about the inner workings of Al Qaeda and bin Laden. One of the many things he shares with the intelligence community is that bin Laden's wish to attack the embassies, either in the United States or abroad. Also around this time, as you well know, we talk about this all the time, the NSA is beginning their signals intelligence operation on a house owned by a man named Ahmed Al Qaeda, who is a bin Laden associate located in Sami, Yemen. CIA also begins their operation.
Right.
Now, all of this is happening without the complete awareness of the FBI.
Right. Exactly correct.
Why?
Not,
of course.
No.
Right.
No,
I want to know why not involve the FBI at that point?
You're sitting down, right?
Yes.
Okay. We never grow up from children in the sandbox hating each other for personal reasons. And I can sit here with a straight face, look straight at that camera, and tell you because of the hatred of John O'Neill and the hatred of the FBI by certain individuals at the CIA who do not want the FBI fucking up their alleged plan or operation. That's what it comes down to. Personal animosity, acrimony, hatred, whatever word you want to use. And people say to me, oh, come on, Mark, that's just fucking stupid. Come on, you idiot. That's got to be something more. Well, tell me then, what's the answer? I'm waiting. What's the official reason that one agency would not share with another agency dedicated both to protecting the homeland, which, tell me. I'm waiting for the logical law or legal reason that it was not shared. My ears work. I mean, this one's a little deaf, but this one's really actually almost deaf. This one's pretty bad too. But tell me, what's the answer? None. It was the hatred on a personal level of an individual named John O'Neill. It's a personal hatred of the FBI interfering that only the agency could play overseas, that the FBI had no interest in playing overseas. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And people just don't want to accept that or understand it because, Adam, again, where is it written in any regulation law that you can't share information, that you don't bring each other in an operation. The FBI and the CIA operate every day, or did operate every day when we were going after Russians as foreign counterintelligence enemies. Okay, but even then there were hiccups because the agency wanted to cut the bureau out and vice versa sometimes because they hated each other. But when it comes to terrorism and a group that's going to attack your embassies, you don't share that. You don't get a bunch of FBI agents over to Nairobi to be in the embassy to work with the Kenyan CID to round up the group before they do the fucking attack, or in Dar es Salaam. Because you can't tell me that from those wiretaps that were done on that code word investigation, it was code word I can't mention, okay, that somewhere in those books that house all the transcripts that could fill this room, okay, there's not a nugget, or in the NSA recordings, the CIA recordings, we're going to do it on this day. You can't tell me it doesn't exist. So why was there no accountability? That's the thing I don't understand. And there's, and moreover, the NSA, listening to the Hatta House, who, of course, Ahmed al-Hatta is the father-in-law, okay, of Khalid al-Midhar, one of the hijackers.
Right.
So the fact that there wasn't like this open pipeline, right? Get smart, cone of silence, something, just whoosh, direct message,
right,
is mind-boggling and frustrating and agonizing. And when you ask people these questions, they go, "Oh yeah, well, must have been some reason. I don't know. Yeah, I can't figure that one out." Because you never tried to look for the answer, because you never had a hearing. So all these years later, Adam, 1998, you're going to have a hearing? Nah.
Well,
No.
and that was 2 years prior to the attacks on the embassies too. It's good, like I always said, what are the, you're talking about serious men when it comes to Al Qaeda and affiliates.
Yes.
We're not talking about, the trivialities of,
Yeah.
American life. These people are talking on the phone, and God knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Are they talking about operations? Are they talking about something else? But I find it hard to believe, Mark, that they wouldn't be talking about operations. And somewhere it got either wasn't listened to, they just collected data, didn't read it, or maybe, and I'm going off the fringes here a little bit, maybe they found that maybe the attacks could be beneficial, will allow it, but I can't really go there because that's a damning charge. And I don't have the evidence for it. I don't got the guts for it. But it's not like the warning signs weren't there, because in the spring and summer months of 1998, one example is the plea that was made by the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Prudence Bushnell. Right. She had given notification to the State Department through those spring months, that intelligence threats reporting to her was that jihadists were planning to bomb U.S. embassies in the region. And then you had this guy, an Egyptian cell member named Mustafa Mahmoud Saeed Ahmad, who walked into a U.S. embassy in Nairobi, Kenya.
That's right.
And tells CIA case officers there that he knows of a group of people planning to blow at the embassy. They found it to be credible. Now, this is similar, again, Mark, with similarities to 9/11. This is similar to 9/11 attacks.
Yeah.
Right? Pre-intelligence, here you have it.
Right.
Nothing is shared. I mean,
nothing is shared,
again,
nothing is done. Nothing is shared, nothing is done. Because at that time as well, and again, I don't want to talk politics here. We're talking about policy in the respect that the president at the time, of course, was Bill Clinton. But it could have been George Bush. It could have been Ronald Reagan as president. It could have been anybody as president. Because at that time, we looked at terrorism as a criminal activity, not a war. So again, we are the high and mighty, politically correct United States government. We do things by the book. It's not a movie. we use the law to get it right, to arrest these people and bring them to justice. However, in order to do that, the criminal act or the act of terrorism has to take place first. Now, no one's going to say that no one would have wanted in the FBI to prevent an act of terrorism. Of course, if you could uncover a plot and stop it beforehand. But the issue is, we were going after the players that we knew about from a criminal perspective, because we had to find something to arrest them on, whether it was spitting or littering, something. And then you stop them that way and convict them that way. Okay. Now, of course, it's turned because of the war that Al Qaeda or radical fundamental Islam has declared on the Western world. We're now more about prevention and infiltrating and, being very heavy to neutralize the threat and monitor, but we still looking at it from a law enforcement perspective. And that was back then, that was, so the issue, what have they done criminally wrong? Well, they're kind of planning on doing this thing. We don't know when or what, but, they haven't done anything wrong. We have no reason to arrest them. No, if we change the mindset and our policy and our legalities, that this is a war. Donald Rumsfeld always spoke about GWAT, Global War on Terror. And I would always say, even when I was in the government, I would say, well, what the fuck are you talking about, global war on terror? What war? You haven't done anything. Okay, you retaliated and bombed the shit out of Afghanistan and went to Iraq illegally because they had nothing to do with Al Qaeda. That's another story. But if it's a war, well, then let's go find the terrorists that we have been monitoring and we know are terrorists around the globe. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to sound like a real power-hungry, crazy man to people watching this. Round them up, wherever they are in the world, because it's a global war on terror. Now, so that tremendous power and responsibility can be abused to the point of no end. Let's be serious about this, right? You get some, overzealous moron in any government agency. That guy's a terrorist. Let's round him up. No, you don't fucking want that.
Right.
At the same time, we sit on our hands waiting for the perpetrators, let's say, of the Nairobi bombing and Dar es Salaam bombing to do something illegal so we can arrest them so they don't do the bombing. That's just insane. At the same time, we want to live in a society where, almost like a Star Chamber, right? Remember that great classic movie where we say, guy's a terrorist. Send the SEALs in, pick them up. Do we want that? Can we live with that? Do we have a council, let's say, made up of actually defense lawyers who look at it and say, you know what, the guy's a fucking terrorist. I think we should get him. I mean, what do we do? But what we're doing even now still is not enough, because every single attack we have had here in Europe, the people plowing their car into groups, okay, with those markets. Those people all on the radar beforehand and should not have been free. But they haven't done anything. They're here, they're living their lives, they're going to work. But if they go through a red light, we'll grab them. No. Right. They're on your radar for a freaking reason. But I don't know what the answer is, Adam. I really don't. And I would shudder to have that responsibility and be in charge of that group too as well. But I don't know what the answer is, because action is quicker than reaction.
Yes.
I always say to people, people always get outraged. You see these videos on YouTube or whatever, and let's say when a police officer stops a car. Okay, and the critics, the cop's got his hand on his gun or her gun as they walk up to the car. And I'm like, yeah, because they don't know who you are behind that wheel. They don't know that you have already decided in your brain that you're going to shoot them when they get there. They don't know that they have already decided when you roll down the window, they're going to grab you and attack you. The cop doesn't know that because when you have to react to the action, and the initiator of the action always has the advantage. So it's the same thing. We can't read minds about acts of terrorism, people going to commit terrorist acts, but somebody who has been on the radar of the French police, Spanish police, German police, whatever, the American FBI, etc., and they're involved in going to meetings and clandestine operations and communications, they're a terrorist. Don't wait for them to blow a traffic light in order to arrest them, lock them up. Don't comb through their immigration papers hoping you find some mistake. They lied on a document. Let me bring them in. No, but that's the world we live in.
And with all this missed opportunity, Mark, throughout that year and the years prior, and going back,
right.
2 years with the NSA, CIA's operations at the Yemen. August 7th, the bombing happens, right?
Right.
And the FBI's response right there, they're flying out to Nairobi, Kenya, Dar es Salaam.
24 hours a day.
4 days later, right? They get somebody, Muhammad al-Wahhab. And he's arrested at the hospital, and it's the FBI agent Stephen Gordon that goes and debriefs him,
right?
Finding out that indeed al-Hali was seen calling a house in a payphone outside. Found out that this number is for a house in Yemen.
Yes,
FBI had no idea about this house.
Oh, well,
now,
yeah,
but there is enough intelligence prior from dismissed interests. From, say, Mustafa Mahmoud Ahmed, the Egyptian, the debriefing of a former Al Qaeda associate, El Hussein Kerchatu. There's a former FBI Al Qaeda operative who, the British MI6 were investigating. You had Bushnell's warnings, the NSA CIA with intentional withholding of the Yemen hub number from the FBI. And so the question is, and you can take this wherever it goes, and it goes right back to the essence of your question you had prior. Why wasn't there any congressional oversight regarding all of this missed opportunities? There was enough here to open an inquiry and say, hey, wait a minute. Just like with 9/11, we had these missed opportunities.
Absolutely.
Because to me, Mark, this very much seems like one giant intelligence failure, or if I can go off the rails, a conspiracy of nefarious intentions. What are your thoughts?
Man. Adam, great questions. I don't know. Okay, getting a conspiracy theory, if you will, grand conspiracy to keep it under wraps.
Yeah.
That can only live for so long where people start to speak up and they can't hold it in any longer. So I'm not so sure, so to speak, about that per se, or in line with what you're saying, though, perhaps just the will is lost because maybe there were some members of Congress that wanted to do this, but they didn't have enough backing or traction from their counterparts in their party. It would have maybe proved politically embarrassing for who was in charge. But see, the 9/11 attacks that happened on U.S. soil could not be ignored.
Right.
But those hearings, if my memory serves me correctly, almost didn't happen either.
Right.
No. The 9/11 Commission almost didn't happen either. It was just immense groundswell of public anger that caused them to happen. The Nairobi, Dar es Salaam bombings brought no such anger because it happened over there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. I came back just before Thanksgiving, 1998, and about, Thanksgiving comes and goes. And I had a very dear friend of mine that was a stockbroker at Merrill Lynch. He worked at the World Financial Center across the street from the towers. And there was a bar there called Moran's, I think it was. It was a very popular place, right? So I go meet my friend Eddie for a drink. His mother-in-law, as a matter of fact, was one of the first people to die in the 9/11 attack. She worked for Aon. Came right into her office. Killed her. And a funny story about Eddie too. But anyway, we're having a drink outside with a bunch of brokers from his office. And, I'm the only FBI agent there, of course, but I knew all these guys. And we're having a drink and a bunch of guys and gals, group of 10, 20 people. And one of the ladies asked me, she says, I don't know you from the office. You don't work here. I said, no. I'm just a friend of Eddie and Rob. And blah, blah. Oh, okay. She said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm an FBI agent. She goes, really? Oh, wow. What do you work? I said, I work counterterrorism. I work. Said, oh, that's interesting. Do you travel much? And must be. I said, yeah. As a matter of fact, I just spent just 3 months over in Nairobi. The best investigating the bombing of the embassy there. Well, yeah, I heard about that. That with just that expression. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Here's a woman, highly educated, MBA, blah, 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 right? Making millions as a book. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Monitors the news every day. So, of course, I politely said to the guy, he goes, hey, guys, I got to go. I finished my drink.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. I'll never forget that statement. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. That's why, Adam, I think, because it happened over there. And maybe those people over there in that embassy, I mean, they didn't deserve it, but, why would you go over there to work? So it was kind of like a risk for the job. I don't know what goes through people's minds as to why that, but that's the only thing I can think of. But when 9/11 happened, it was too much to bear. But again, I remember the pushback when I was in Washington time, even forming that commission. I said, oh, don't fucking tell me you're not going to have you're not going to inquire about this.
Right.
Wow. The hesitancy to do even that inquiry. Incredible. So that goes to show you, was there ever an inquiry into the coal per se? Not
No,
really.
that's right.
No, there were committee conversations about it. There was inquiry in the Pentagon, but there was no real, in-depth what went wrong here. No. Terrible.
Well, let me ask an impossible question. I hate to put you in a spot.
Oh, man,
but
go ahead.
Had there been a congressional inquiry with 98, would it have had the same indifference to the intelligence agency such as the 9/11 Commission did? Or would there have been a different outcome?
Well,
Because with the all right, let me say it this way. The
Please.
9/11 Commission basically didn't ask any questions to the NSA. They touched on the CIA, but didn't really push them. With the FBI, it basically was, well, what have you done for me lately? So in other words, there was some interest in certain areas, but there wasn't. Would that have been the same playbook with the 98 bombings? Because you had a lot of misintelligence with the CIA and NSA regarding.
Yeah, no, I think your questions, you already know the answer, and you're correct. I believe so. I agree. It would have been the same playbook. It would have been the same. A lot of hot air, but never getting down to the actual question. Let's say regarding 9/11, why was Doug Miller's memo not sent?
Right.
Okay, and with Nairobi, you could say, why was the FBI not brought in to work the Nairobi cell that Alex Station was working?
Correct.
No one would have asked those questions, and no one would have ever answered them. That is the sad reality of it.
Right.
I'm just, some days, it's maddening. You want to just pull your hair out. Just like, why is it so obvious? Something so obvious, and that is not done. So who's really in charge? What is really going on? Where's the accountability and the lying that went on? The lying that went on in 9/11, people congressional testimony. Imagine the lying that would have gone on in Nairobi.
Oh my goodness.
People don't get in trouble. No one's criminally charged. Alfreda Bukowski lied, said she went to the FBI building and dropped off the memo, but doesn't remember who she gave it to.
Right. No record of her ever going there.
No record of her into the building. I remember, I'll never forget, a colleague of mine told me about that, and she was involved in researching, going through the login book.
Right.
She never once came, and she's not prosecuted. 18 U.S.C. 1001 false statements.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? So you begin to lose all faith in the system because you realize the law is only applies to some people who are on the list to get. And just magically, that didn't matter, the lie. Tom Wilshire lies and says behind a curtain that, well, it just fell through the cracks. It fell through the cracks. You're talking about terrorists that you followed halfway around the globe that went to San Diego. You prevented an FBI agent from telling the FBI about. That fell through the cracks? Come on, man. That's the issue. That's the problem. It's a lack of accountability, and it just deflates any semblance that any justice will ever be done for the victims. So for the victims of Nairobi and Tanzania, unfortunately, there's no memorial to you other than probably in those places. There's no anniversary of your passing. One of the things that I wrote about in my 20-something page memo, which you could feel free to publish again. Obviously, it's public.
That's actually, I'm going to be put in the description of the episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought. I'm getting old.
Both.
What?
It was you were talking. You were going to bring up a point about I think after Tom Wilshire, you said something to the effect of no accountability.
Tom Wilshire, lack of accountability, no memorial, no hearings.
Yeah, no reading of the names, nothing.
No thought as to getting to the root as to how and why that operation was not interrupted.
Right.
And for the families, the victims, you're really forgotten. Now, remember, most of the people that died in the Nairobi bomb, this is what I wanted to say, were Muslim. Okay, they were local Kenyans who were Muslim. Matter of fact, Kenya has a very large Muslim population. Matter of fact, also a very large Christian population. But when Daoud Rashid Alawali, when he was arrested, and Steve, another agent whose name escapes me, were interviewing him. Okay. Now let me just correct you a little bit on sequence of events. Okay. Steve and the other agent, forget the guy's name. I know him too. And I just
was it Antisev?
No. That's hold on.
Oh, okay.
So Steve and this other agent are with Alawali in the room, and they're going at it. Not going at it. They're talking. Come on. Blah, 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 blah. So they're getting nowhere to a degree. I said, you know what? Let's take a break. They leave. Now, Dan Coleman, who had been at Alex Station before me,
right.
Danny's in the other room behind the two-way mirror, okay, with John Antisev. Steve and the other agent take a break. Mm-hmm. John comes in and sits down. Okay, now got Rashid in front of him. First thing John says, did you eat? Did you pray? You want water? Are you okay? Yeah, no, I'm fine. I ate. I'm good. No, I'm good. I'm okay, fine. Tell me what happened that day. What do you mean? Walk me through your day, your morning. You got up, went to the bathroom, washed your face, but just have a conversation. Tell me, talk to me who you are. Right? What are you all about? He starts to talk and explain who he is, where he comes from, blah, 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 and his activities of the day of the bombing. And explains that after the bombing, he went, he was all bloodied up, of course. Yeah. Before he went to the hospital, he went back to the guest house, hotel, whatever, the flea bag place he was staying. And he starts getting some stuff together, getting his papers, getting his evidence, whatever. And John says, Well, did you call anybody? He goes, yes, yes, yes. I called the number. What number did you call? And he writes it down. Blah, 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 967, blah, 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 blah. I remember the 967 because that's the 967 is the prefix in Rye, New York. My parents are or were. So that John writes that number down, gets up and gives it to Dan Coleman. Dan Coleman gives it to the CIA. Now, from the FBI's perspective, that's the first time the FBI even knows
About the
about
number,
the number that goes
right.
to Yemen.
Right.
Okay. The FBI doesn't know who it belongs to.
Right.
But the FBI now, at that point in time, is so focused on the investigation of the criminal acts of terrorism that took place in the two localities. We're not thinking about that number, so to speak, to do our own investigation who it belongs to. We gave it to our dear friends, the CIA, to look up, to give it to them, who in turn are going to give it to the NSA to go up on. But the failure on the Bureau's part, and this is something you should FOIA, was there any memo communication between the FBI and the CIA asking, requesting, acknowledging, blah, blah, blah. Who does that number belong to, by the way, that John Anseth got out of the interview? That's never been answered. That's never been asked, to my knowledge. So did the Bureau, and of course, I'll always make excuses for the FBI, sorry, in its being so fucking busy working a homicide of 258 people, okay, and all the implications and bringing down the cell and preventing another attack, forgot about that number, or just said, okay, they'll tell us when they're going to tell us and it'll happen. I don't know. Because I have to admit, or have to think that if the Bureau had known who that number belonged to, the Bureau would have said, hey, you NSA, go up on that number for us and tell us what's going on. But I don't believe that ever happened. Ever happened.
That's a good question, by the way. I never thought of that.
It's a fundamental one that I've always inquired about. So,
well, let's talk about something recent. And before we pressed the record button, we were talking about it. For me, it's the biggest breakthrough for 9/11, and that's the Canestraro document.
Yes.
I was floored by reading it. And again, disappointed with all me. I have to say it here live that I'm disappointed with all media's response to the lack of coverage from it, which is, complete bombshell. So my question, let me just get the obvious out of the way. Why, Mark? And I don't expect you to have a concrete answer because no one knows. But I want your thoughts. Why was there no media attention to this?
As my old partner told me, he said to me, you're the only one that cares anymore. No one cares anymore, Mark. No one cares. People are so tired and beaten trying to pay their mortgage, pay their rent, keep a roof over their head, keep the kids in school. After what happened with the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq, we just don't want to hear it. They want to move on. And I think that's probably it. And there's also this, with everything else going on in the world, obviously now politically,
it's
like, who has the appetite for it? And then the other thing is, as my colleague said to me, he said, what good is it going to do? What's it going to prove? Shamefully, he's probably right. I lament having to admit that, but there's just probably no political will or care because, 24 years have passed. And it's kind of like that young lady saying, oh, that happened over there. I heard something about that. Kind of like, oh, yeah, that happened 24 years ago. Okay, yeah, we know what happened. Yeah, a bunch of guys came over. The CIA didn't share, and it happened. All right. So What are you going to do?
Hmm.
Someone going to go to jail over it? What's it going to accomplish? There's that. And that's pathetic.
Sure.
That's like knowing where the murderer lives and not putting them in jail.
Hmm.
And knowing the evidence. Now, one would say, what are you saying? Shoyer and all those people should be in jail? They should be publicly held accountable for their crass indifference, depraved indifference, and arrogance in not sending that information to the FBI. They should not be allowed to get away with that. That's what I'm driving at. It's just despicable. Despicable. Richard Clark had the temerity, had the balls to turn around and say to them, we failed you. All right. And he said, 50 people knew of their arrival. 50 people. A cable even went to New York Station. Okay. Why didn't the chief of station turn around to O'Neill and others in the FBI and say, hey guys, you should know about this shit? The chief of station in LA, the base in San Diego, headquarters. George, Louis, I got something to tell you. Why? Why not? It defies logic. And when you're in a big enough position in the government, you can just push this down, keep it away, keep it away. And that's all it is. That's all it is. You'll go after individual people, the low-level agents and whatever, they fuck up, they do something, you'll go after them. But the big boys have a certain immunity. That's what we're talking about here.
Right, because what's revealed in that, what's revealed in that document is now what we always suspected, is that the CIA, Saudi intelligence, running an operation inside the United States, which they're not supposed to do. Right.
Which I mentioned before, I think you started recording.
Right.
Omar Abayoumi was even like a triple agent.
Right.
In the respect that he was compromised by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs in Saudi Arabia. He allegedly is going to be working for the GID by informing the GID as to what was going on, but he turns on them and doesn't tell them everything that's going on in the cell. He clearly knew, I'm convinced, of the plot. That it was going to involve planes, etc. There's no question about that. But the fact that he has not been brought back to America and put in a grand jury. Now, then again, when we said to me, oh, Mark, shut up. Like the grand jury, someone doesn't lie in the grand jury. Please. He'll just do the same lies he said in Saudi Arabia. But the documents, the plane drawings, the calculations found in his room in England.
In his house.
And the Bureau never got those. You know, those documents are almost thrown out.
Oh, were they?
It was a clerk down in the evidence section, wherever in West Virginia, whatever it was, that knew about Operation Encore being investigated.
Right.
And called the case agent and said, you know what? I got something here you might want to see. This is the stuff that the Brits gave. I want to know all about that. What MI5, MI6, and what, I don't know, London, Scotland Yard, when they took the papers and gave it to the Legat or the ALAT in London, who they give it to? What human being? What man or woman? I want to know who they are. And what communication did they write? Did they accompany that stuff back to the FBI headquarters? That evidence? It was just thrown to a black hole. Never mentioned by a 9/11 commission. Never mentioned by the actual FBI investigators. Jackie McGuire. No, nothing. That stinks to high heaven. It is infuriating. Infuriating that was almost burned. That was set to be burned. And if it wasn't for that one clerk who had known how, I don't know, of Operation Encore ongoing, called the case agent and said, I got something here you might want to see. No one in FBI New York ever heard of it, never saw it.
That's unbelievable.
It's and there's never been an official accounting. Don't ever make me president or a senator, because I will demand to know. I want to know every fucking step that happened along the way with that document.
Yes,
That
right.
tape from Al Bayoumi's place in London or England. I want to know every step, every agent involved, anybody who touched that stuff, anybody who wrote an email about it. I want to know why. I want to know how they were involved and what they did and what they didn't do. You know, we have the capability of investigating things to the fine-tooth comb, to the point of absurdity, and sometimes twisting things out of evidence to make fit our own fucking narrative sometimes. But you don't investigate this. You don't get to the bottom of this. Come on, man. That's just despicable. So then it goes back to your question: a conspiracy to cover it up. You begin to start to think like, holy shit, what is going on? Can you allow such an abject failure in something so important? Okay. You seize cocaine off a guy, a pouch gets dropped, a joint falls out of the bag. All right, fine. You still caught him with a kilo. So a kilo and a little glassine envelope is missing. Big deal. You still got the kilo. Omar Bayoumi, you get this document that shows calculations where the pilot that Don Canestraro interviews says this is calculations of how to glide into an object.
Yeah.
And that just gets lost in the morass, if you will. Come on, man. If that's true, if it just legitimately got lost, that's just incompetence. Then it just shows to show what else did you fuck up?
Right, exactly.
Right, right.
And also too, what's new? Like, I want to wrap it up here, but I found also what was news to me. I don't know if it's for you, but the CIA has an open file on Omar Al Bayoumi since the mid-90s, and I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
It was in the doc. Yeah, it's in the document, and I was like, why would they have a file on that guy? Well, I guess if he's connected to GID, well, then there's,
right.
You have that in
now,
the case. But
again, one word of caution: what does having a file open mean?
Right. Okay, that's a good question. That's right.
It may have been just like his name is mentioned. It's just like it's a name of a guy working for the Saudis in San Diego. But was there an active inquiry about him? No. But I get your point. But again, we're trying to be rational, not be emotional. Let's just study it and say, okay, so a file was open. Okay, it's because he worked. Okay, was a Saudi government employee. Okay, fair enough. Boom. There's nothing to investigate, so it's just open.
And something
comes in, well, then it gets thrown in there.
Right.
Not exactly investigated. But you're right. It all adds now to the questions, or adds to the mystery as to why certain things were not done and why there's no accountability. Will we ever have a trial at Guantanamo, by the way, you think?
You're asking me? I'll tell you what Ken Williams, Phoenix Memo, told me once when I interviewed him. I asked him the same question, and he says that no. And the reason why is because they'll take the death penalty off the table. He's sure of this. They'll take the death penalty, and they'll agree not to. They'll agree to everything 9/11 related. And I said to him, okay, if that's going to be the case, my worry is the following. We'll never know what the government had or didn't have, because whatever they have, they'll classify it. And we won't know for the next 30, 40 years.
Right.
I want to know what they didn't have at that point.
Yeah.
Now, I interviewed somebody named Nick Fielding who worked with an Al Jazeera reporter named Yosri Fuda, if you never heard of him. He interviewed Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and Ramzi bin al-Shib in 2002 before they got captured. It's on video.
Okay.
And the person who reiterated this is somebody I'm hoping to get interviewed in this year.
Okay.
Reiterated this in an email to me. Thomas Drake from the NSA, the former senior executive. Yeah. Okay. He said that the 9/11 Commission, I didn't know this, 9/11 Commission has pictures of the stills of that video. So that video really took place. That interview took place.
Wow.
What?
Whoa.
How is this not? I mean, if you're the CIA, I have. This is it. They
Right.
admitted to planning 9/11, right? Both of them. And Yoshi Fuda wrote a book about this called Masterminds of Terror. And I was so into, I knew about this years ago, and I was really interested. That's why I reached out to Nick Fielding. He did that interview. It was great. And I was like, man, how can nobody be talking about this?
Wow.
He told me that the CIA had the video. That they, when they captured College Kimaba, or the Yoshi Fuda gave it to the CIA, never heard from him again. So I asked Thomas Drake about an email recently, and he says, yeah, they used the video stills of the video in the 9/11 Commission, but it's not. I guess it's not declassified or whatever. I'm like, why not?
Why not? What are you hiding? What are you afraid of?
What? Right.
You know, that's the whole point. You know,
this is before the torture.
The best, yeah, right. The best medicine is light of day. Just that's the best disinfectant. Why? What are you afraid of? You know, and you'll unfortunately you'll get people to say, well, you guys don't know. You're not smart enough. These things you shouldn't know. Fuck you. Almost 3,000 people died.
Right.
Okay, the world changed. Our whole way of living was affected by this. We need to know. Okay, now what are you afraid of? Let the truth come out. What are you afraid of? Come on, it's horrible. It's horrible. The first instinct is to close ranks and cover your ass rather than opening up the kimono and letting the truth out. Terrible.
Mark Rossini, FBI agent out of County, New York, whistleblower, and a real great human being. And I thank you very much for coming on, Mark.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. Thank you. Keep up the good fight.
Thank you, sir.